It started in a federal courtroom no one thought he belonged in. Just a janitor. Just a mop. Just a single dad with calloused hands and no law degree. But when no one else stood up, he did. Not because he had something to gain, but because he had something to protect. What happened next would ripple through boardrooms, headlines, and hearts alike. This isn't a story about legal battles or billion-dollar companies. It's about truth, the kind scrubbed into silence. Until one man refused to stay silent anymore. Now here's how it all began. The courtroom air was thick, chatter fading as the janitor stepped forward. "I will defend her." The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. "Who are you?" Mason read. "Maintenance." Snickers echoed. The woman on trial, CO Elise Carrington, whipped her head around. Her voice steel and disbelief. "You clean our floors." "I do," Mason replied calmly. "But I also read. And I know what they're doing to you." The prosecutor laughed. "This is absurd." "Maybe," Mason said. "But I have evidence. And if she has no one else, I'll stand." Elise looked shaken. Silent. The judge raised a brow. "Ms. Carrington." "Objection." She hesitated. Then, with eyes like cracked glass, she whispered, "Let him speak." Elise Carrington had built Titan Core from a kitchen desk and late-night takeout. But this morning, the seat beside her sat empty. Her legal team vanished overnight. No calls, no warnings. Just silence. Across the aisle, Mason Red stood alone. His folder tucked beneath one arm, mop bucket still damp near the door. "Are you licensed, Mr. Red?" the judge asked. "No, sir," Mason said. "But I studied law before I scrubbed floors. And I've studied this case harder than anyone in this room." Lee stared. This man, this stranger, spoke with more clarity than her advisors ever did. Mason didn't flinch under laughter or side glances. "I found a pattern," he said. "Someone doctored that contract from offshore. I can prove it." For the first time in days, Elise exhaled. Not because she trusted him. Because somehow she wanted to. The shredder jam that changed everything. 3 weeks earlier, a shredder jammed on Titan Core's 39th floor. Mason had cursed quietly, then opened the hatch. Crumpled drafts. Mostly garbage. But one page caught his eye. Half-shredded, sealed, confidential. Clause adjustment. It didn't match the formatting of any Titan Core document he'd ever wiped off tables. The legal phrasing wasn't American standard. It was European. He slipped the page into his cleaning cart, tucked behind bleach and gloves. That night, under a flickering lamp beside his daughter's homework, he read the clause. It transferred voting rights for a major AI asset, signed with Elise's name but routed through a Zurich IP. Mason didn't know what he'd found. Not fully. But he knew one thing. Someone was trying to bury something. And Elise Carrington might be the first name on the tombstone. Why would you even care? After court recessed, Elise cornered Mason by the stairs. Her voice was low and furious. "You want attention. Promotion. Why are you doing this?" Mason didn't raise his voice. "My wife died 4 years ago. I buried her. Then I buried my law license. But my daughter, she's 10 now, she believes in people like you. Bosses who build things. I couldn't let her see you get torn apart just because no one paid attention to a janitor." Elise blinked. Her guard wavered. "You think I'm innocent." "I think you're being framed," he replied. "And I think someone inside helped them." She didn't say thank you. She didn't smile. But she didn't walk away either. Something they didn't expect. Inside Elise's executive suite, Mason handed over the printout, The IP trace, metadata, altered language samples. Her fingers shook as she held it. This signature's not mine. I know, he said. It came from Zurich. Logged the same week your assistant Paul Temple was in Europe. Her face went pale. Paul had my codes, but he resigned right after that trip. Did he take anything with him? A thumb drive. Said it had meeting notes. Mason leaned in. If we find it, we find your smoking gun. She studied him again, not as a janitor, not as a hero, but as someone terrifyingly unexpected. You're not what I expected, Mr. Red. He smiled faintly. Most people don't see the man behind the mop. And for the first time since her fall began, Elise realized. Maybe someone finally did. Later that evening, Mason walked into his tiny apartment in Newark. Emma, his daughter, sat on the floor, building a model of the solar system with clay and string. You look tired, she said, not looking up. I started a war today, he replied. With who? The kind of people who wear suits and ruin lives behind desks. Emma tilted her head. Did you win? Not yet, he smiled. But I might have bought someone time to breathe. He picked up Saturn. Mom would be proud. Mason nodded, throat tight. He didn't need medals or applause. He just needed to look his daughter in the eye and know he'd stood up when it mattered. Because in a world where power shouted, Mason Red whispered truth and made it echo. Elise unlocked the door to Paul Temple's old office. Dust covered everything. No one had touched a file since he vanished. Mason moved methodically, opening drawers, scanning notes. Nothing. Until a final drawer jammed. He forced it open. Inside, a worn leather notebook, and taped inside the back cover, a yellow sticky note. Zurich Box 1178. Private courier locker. L authorized. Mason stared. L meant Lanner. The offshore firm rumored to be circling Titan Core for months. Elise had mentioned them once. In a whisper, like saying their name too loud might trigger ruin. He took a photo. Pocketed the note. Found something, he said. Elise met his eyes. Then we follow it. No. I follow it, he replied. You stay visible. Stay strong. She hesitated, then nodded. For the first time, she trusted a man who had nothing to prove, only something to protect. The building was gray and forgettable. Hure Logistics. No signs. No cameras. Just the kind of place people use to hide things. Mason walked in with nothing but the sticky note and his ID. The receptionist didn't blink when he said, Box 1178. Emergency authorization. She handed him a silver key. Second corridor. Third row. The locker door groaned open. Inside, one envelope sealed in red wax, and a thumb drive marked protocol. Mason held it like it might bite. Because this wasn't just about Elise anymore. This was about how many others had been silenced by technicality and greed. Back home, he sat at the kitchen table, Emma asleep nearby. He cracked the wax seal. Inside, a memo from Lanner Holdings. Strategic Takeover Plan. Phase 3. Discredit Carrington. Remove leadership via litigation optics. His hands shook. The storm hadn't started. It had been manufactured. Court resumed the next day. Elisa's lawyer, new, skeptical, sat beside her. Mason stood in the gallery, silent, folder in hand. Mr. Red, the judge said, you've submitted new evidence? Yes, Your Honor. Sealed memo. Chain of custody intact. Locker registered to Paul Temple. Authorized under Lanner Holdings. Whispers. Elise didn't move. The judge raised a brow. You're not her lawyer. No, sir. I'm the man who found what her own board buried. Prosecutor snorted. You expect us to believe a janitor uncovered all this? Mason stepped forward. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to follow the paper trail that starts in Zurich and ends in this courtroom. Lanner engineered this. They planned Elise's collapse before the ink dried on her last board report. Elise's eyes met his. No longer disbelief. Something else now. Oh. After court, Elise cornered Mason again, this time softer. Her eyes weren't ice anymore. They were glass thawing. You could have ignored that shredded paper. Why didn't you? Mason shrugged. Because it didn't belong there. And neither do you, in a courtroom built on lies. She studied him for a long moment. Do you know what this could cost you? I mop floors, he said. There's not much more they can take from me. Elise's voice caught. You know what scares me most? I built a billion-dollar company and no one warned me this was coming. You did. And I didn't even see you. Mason looked her in the eye. People like me. We live in the corners of your world. But we see everything. She nodded once, slowly. Then let's make them see you too. 3 months ago, Elise Carrington stood on the 49th floor of Titanier, sipping cold coffee, unaware the floor beneath her was cracking. Her team was celebrating a funding milestone. Paul Temple had just returned from Zurich, smiling, efficient, lying. She didn't question why the amendment draft arrived early. He trusted Paul. Trusted the system. But that night Mason, on hands and knees, cleaned her office. And while emptying her shred bin, he noticed the draft. Slightly curled. Slightly wrong. He didn't read it at first. But later, in a quiet kitchen filled with the smell of burnt toast and his daughter's sleepy humming, he unfolded it. Something felt off. The clause's formatting. The signature metadata. Even the font. That was the first time Mason realized. They weren't just burying a company. They were burying a woman alive. Elise sat in her empty boardroom, phone off, tie undone. Her empire, built from scratch, was now a chessboard of hostile hands. She remembered her father's words. They'll come for you when you're brightest. People fear light. She thought she'd prepared. For envy. For rivalry. Not betrayal from within. Then Mason Red happened. A man she hadn't noticed in 3 years now stood taller than any partner she'd ever trusted. He hadn't offered solutions. He'd offered truth. Elise wasn't sure what unnerved her more. How close they came to destroying her. Or the fact that only someone with nothing to gain had fought for her. She whispered into the air. If you're watching, Dad. I think someone finally saw me. Mason needed help. Not more data proof. Witnesses. Records. Someone who knew how to pull corporate masks off. He called Alan Webb, a former journalist turned whistleblower. They met in a corner diner, surrounded by the hiss of a leaking coffee machine. Alter Holdings. Alan muttered. I tried taking them down once. Got sued into oblivion. What did they do now? Everything, Mason said, sliding over the memo. Alan scanned it, jaw tightening. You found this. In a locker, Mason said. Under a name I trusted once. Alan looked at him, brows furrowed. You're not supposed to be the guy who finds this. I wasn't supposed to lose my wife either. Life doesn't care. Alan leaned back. You want this public. Mason nodded. Then let's make sure it's too loud to bury. Courtroom packed. Cameras hidden in corners. Reporters whispering behind notebooks. The judge entered, adjusting his glasses with weary patience. Elise stood beside her lawyer, polished but visibly worn. Mason, sitting behind them, wore a navy shirt. Pressed. Burrowed. But his folder, that was his armor. Mr. Red, the judge began. You've submitted cross-verification. Yes, Your Honor. Time-stamped email threads. Courier logs. Digital forensics. Paul Temple routed the signature using Elise Carrington's offshore token without permission. The judge scanned the documents. You're a janitor. I am, Mason said. But I also remember what justice is supposed to feel like. The room went still. Even Elise turned. Not with judgment. Not anymore. With something closer to awe. Outside the courthouse, Elise caught up to Mason on the marble steps. The wind carried the scent of exhaust and nerves. You changed everything, she said softly. No, he replied. I just refused to stay quiet. She looked away. When this started, I thought silence would protect me. Now I know, it almost erased me. Mason looked at her, eyes tired but sharp. You're not done. You just finally know who's worth listening to. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her resignation letter. Crumpled. I wrote this 2 nights ago. In case I lost. And now, he asked. She held his gaze. Now I want to rebuild. And I want you there. Not beneath me, beside me. He paused. You sure? She nodded. You didn't just defend me. You reminded me who I was before the suits taught me fear. The jury had been out for 6 hours. The courtroom was silent, taut like a string stretched to breaking. Emma sat in the gallery beside her father, holding his calloused hand. Elise sat still, unreadable, her eyes locked on the door. The foreperson stood. We find in favor of the defendant, Elise Carrington. The room erupted, not in cheers but breathless disbelief. Elise closed her eyes. Mason didn't move. Not at first. Then he exhaled. Low. Emma whispered. They heard you. Mason shook his head, gaze fixed on Elise. They heard her. Side cameras flashed. Elise didn't speak to reporters. She turned, walked straight to Mason and took his hand. Not your world, she said. But somehow you saved it. He smiled. Sometimes the ones mopping the floor are the only ones who see where it's cracked. Back at Titan Core, sunlight spilled through a cracked boardroom window, unfixed since the storm started. Elise stood beside it now, watching the city. Mason entered quietly. No badge. No mop. Just himself. You're really going to keep it cracked? He asked. She smiled. Let it remind me. Perfect doesn't mean safe. They sat. No board, no suits. Just 2 people who'd walked through fire. I read the deposition again, she said. You said something that stuck. He raised an eyebrow. You said justice doesn't care where you stand, just whether you show up. He shrugged. Still true. She handed him a badge. Not janitorial. Not honorary. Director of Ethics and Risk Insight. He laughed once. Is that even a real title? He smirked. It is now. That night, Mason tucked Emma into bed. She blinked up at him. Daddy. Yeah. Do you think Miss Carrington will ever smile like you do? He paused, brushing her hair back. She already is. Just not with her mouth yet. With her choices. Meanwhile, Elise sat alone in her apartment, staring at a sticky note Mason had left her. They almost buried you. Good thing you're a seed. She smiled. For real. For the first time in months. And for the first time, she didn't reach for a to-do list. She reached for the phone. A number saved. One she had never called. Mason picked up on the second ring. Her voice was quiet. Do you like poetry? I live by it. Then maybe. Let's write something new. 3 weeks later, Titan Core's first open floor day welcomed every employee's family. No titles, no suits, just people. Emma led a workshop on circuits. Mason brewed coffee in the break room, chatting with engineers like old friends. Elise walked in, no fanfare. Just jeans and a folded sweatshirt. Her eyes scanned the room until they found him. "I didn't expect this much light," she said. "That's what happens," Mason replied, "when you clean the windows from both sides." Someone from PR whispered, "He used to be just a janitor." Elise turned. "No," she said firmly. "He was never just anything." Mason chuckled. "I like my new title better." He grinned. "Which one?" He sipped his coffee. "The one only one person ever says." She raised a brow. "Defender." That evening, Elise joined Mason and Emma for dinner in his modest apartment. No velvet chairs. No skyline views. Just chicken stew, quiet laughter, and crayon drawings on the wall. Emma handed Elise a paper heart. "You can only stay if you promise to color outside the lines sometimes." Elise teared up, nodded solemnly. "I'll try." Later, as Emma slept, Elise stood near the window. "This feels like a life I never knew I wanted." Mason stood beside her, gentle. "That's because it's not a performance. It's just life." She looked at him, eyes glassy. "I was raised to win, not to be held." He stepped closer. "Then let me hold what no one ever did, your truth." And in that silence, no kiss, no confession, just two souls letting their walls fall. Something real began. Something earned. If this story stirred something in you, drop a comment. What part made you pause? What line stayed with you? Where are you watching from? I read every country and every city you leave below. And if you believe in stories that lift dignity, love, and second chances, tap that like button. Share this with someone who needs to remember their scene. And hit subscribe plus bell so you never miss the next story. Because the quietest people sometimes hold the loudest truths. And like Mason showed us, love isn't what you say, it's what you do. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.